Committee room gone down by the look of it.
I was wondering if it was just me then. I was like, why is it so quiet?
I thought it
I
was
didn't know
me as
whether to
well.
say anything.
Yeah.
Pretty the flowers are behind you, John.
That's you get for living so close to Julia Jenkins.
Oh my God, I was supposed to go to her house and pick up flowers and I forgot. She's gonna kill me.
Oh,
Just reminded me.
I
Oh,
said
dear.
my wife was easier.
Did she go this morning? Or was it yesterday morning we were supposed to go?
Yesterday.
Oh, see, not just a day late, I'm 2 days late. Craig is here, luck, so we'll just carry on with just Craig, shall we?
Can you hear us now, guys?
Right.
Yeah, we could hear you then.
That you need to go back and approve the minutes
You're back
again,
on
Chair.
video, so-
Yeah, is it back?
Oh,
Is it
you're back.
right? Right. Okay. So can we have someone to second it? Move it, second it, and then we'll vote. So-
Yeah. Can I have somebody to move the minutes, please?
I move the minutes, Chair.
I'll second, Chair.
So could all councillors in agreement please raise their hands? One, two, four, five, six, seven. The minutes are carried, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We move on then to item number 6. Start again. Planning applications, recommendations under the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 and the Planning and Compensation Act 1991. Move on to item 6, P250199 Furnace Row, Ash Road, Troyview. And to consider a report. Who's taking this one, please?
I'll be taking this one, Chair.
Sorry,
Gareth.
Gareth, was it? Sorry, Gareth, I didn't
Sorry.
know you taking it.
Right, good evening, everyone. This application's been presented to committee at the request of Councillor Gareth Lewis, and I believe he'll be speaking later. The site is located in countryside west of Furnace Row, on the eastern side of the Taff Trail, and sits above the adjacent housing. The application seeks permission for the erection of a 1.5 metre hoop top fence for a distance of approximately 80 metres at the top edge of the gabion retaining structure running north to south, along with some biodiversity measures. There's no planning history associated with the application, and the application has been subject to publicity in accordance with statutory requirements, and objections have been raised related to amenity considerations, highway safety concerns, cultural and wellbeing concerns, and ecological considerations. Support for the application is offered on the basis that it will help to prevent accidents and function as a deterrent to antisocial behaviour. Policy is broadly supportive of the proposal, even though it is located outside of settlement limits. Key planning considerations with regard to the determination of this application are that it is considered to be broadly compliant with planning policy. It's acceptable in highway terms. It's acceptable and would have negligible impact on the heritage assets in the area. It offers a proportionate level of mitigation in terms of ecology that is acceptable to the council's ecologist. And as such, the proposal is considered acceptable in planning terms, and the recommendation of approval is subject to conditions is made. And
Is that it, Gareth?
that's it, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Go through the slides,
Right.
Gareth, I can-
We now go to the public speaking element of the meeting, and I'll go to Michelle Hardy. Are you online?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. We'll give you a chance to speak.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. Can I just come in there? I think the applicant will go first.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. The applicant, either Barry Davis or Catherine Blythe. Are they online?
Hello, Chair. It's myself, Barry Davis.
Right.
I've
Good
turned my
afternoon.
camera on, so hopefully you can see and hear me.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Blythe. What we'll do is
Mr.
we'll give
Davis,
you-
it is, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Davis. What we'll do is we'll give you 5 minutes to speak about this application. I will give you a 30-second warning to wrap up, but if you want to introduce yourself before we start?
Yes, sure. My name's Barry Davis. I'm a planning consultant acting for Dŵr Cymru, Welsh Water, and the agent on this this application.
Okay, go ahead. You have 5 minutes from now.
Thank you, Chair. Furnace Row.
Oh,
Furnace Row is a single carriageway public highway and forms part of the Lôn Las Cymru National Cycle Route. It's also part of the Taff Trail, which in itself attracts around 630,000 users per annum. And along Furnace Row, it is highly trafficked with fast-moving bikes, pedestrians, runners and horse riders on a narrow carriageway shared with cars and other vehicles. Furnace Row also carries two major trunk mains, which are strategically important pieces of infrastructure serving the valley. In 2011, the embankment collapse, putting at risk the occupiers of Furnace Row and the properties themselves. There was also a significant risk of the collapse causing a rupture of the trunk mains, which in itself could have caused injury, death or property damage and serious interruptions to water supply. Dŵr Cymru stepped in and carried out emergency reinforcement works to prevent further damage. And the works involved the installation of gabion baskets to shore up the highway and protect the properties below. The works have resulted in a more significant drop from the edge of the highway to the properties below, and so it's been necessary to protect users of the Taff Trail from falls over the side. To date, this has been a temporary measure via the rather unattractive Heras fencing. It's proposed via this application to provide a more permanent solution. Initially, the fencing proposed was to be 2-metre weld mesh fencing, but in light of the concerns raised by residents, the design and height of the fence has been reduced to just 1.5 metres, around about chest height. And the design has been changed to hoop-top railings, which are more residential in character. Any further reduction in height would, I have to say, be contrary to relevant design guidance and best practice, and simply wouldn't provide the protection needed for users of the Taff Trail. I'll now take a moment to respond to the resident concerns, if I may. Concerns have been raised about impact on residential amenity, creating a sense of enclosure, overbearing due to height and the loss of view. Well, the fence height has been significantly reduced in height and is now much more visually permeable and is more domestic in appearance, being hoop-top railings. Another concern was that the existing Heras fencing is an eyesore. Well, we agree, but that the proposed fence is out of character with the surrounding area. We disagree that the hoop-top railing is out of character because it is of a domestic style fence. Other concerns are surrounding a loss of interactions with trail users. I would question the amount of interaction with trail users that currently takes place, but in any event, the railing will not prevent interactions from taking place. And it's even arguable that it's even easier and safer to interact by leaning on the railing whilst having a conversation with someone below, rather than teetering on the edge of the retaining wall with no fall protection. Concerns also raised about obstruction to visibility for all users and residents having to step out onto the road and access impeded by the proposed gates. Well, the fencing is only 1.5 metres high, and so it will not impede visibility, whilst the gate will also not in any way impede access. And your highways officers agree. Concerns also been raised about cultural and historical issues relating to the age of the properties at Furnace Row and their association with the Industrial Revolution. Whilst these properties do have some heritage value, they are not listed or locally listed, and in any event, the provision of a modest 1.5 metre hoop-top railing is not considered to have any significant heritage impact and represents a vast improvement over the current situation. Whilst the proposed fence is required for health and safety reasons, residents are concerned that its design takes no account of the well-being of residents. But on the contrary, the design and height of the fence has been amended to directly account for the well-being of residents and to respond to their concerns. And concerns have been raised in relation to the placement of the ecological enhancement features. It's unclear how the provision of a pole-mounted bat and bird box in the hedge line on the opposite side of the road will cause any reason for concern.
30 seconds.
In closing, Chair, I would just like to reiterate that there are very good health and safety reasons and an urgent need for this fence to be installed to prevent the very many users of the Taff Trail from tumbling over the edge of what is a significant drop. And I think we can all agree that it is not in any way desirable for the temporary solution to be maintained. We've gone to efforts to redesign the fence, and we agree with your professional officer that the plans as amended are entirely acceptable, and we hope you will also agree. Thank you.
Thank you for that. 1 second. Thank you for that. I'll go to councillors and ask for any questions, basically for clarity at this time. Oh, only clarity, Clive.
Clarity.
Any clarity questions?
Well, the first one is, Mr. Davis, I understand, Chair, that there's going to be provision for a gate in the fence. Is this correct?
Yes, it is correct.
And how will the residents be able to access this? Because I understand there is a collection of refuse, etc., from the Taff Trail, which is above their properties. So have they got to go through this gate? I think there's about 12 properties there. Is that correct?
There's 2 in close proximity, and the other houses on Furnace Row are set slightly further back.
That's correct,
Sorry.
Chair.
Sorry, I missed that bit. Gareth, say that again.
There's 2. You can see it on the OS extract there. There's 2 properties in very close proximity, and the others, I can't see the numbers. They're too small. Are set a little further back there.
So on the map that I can see, which is a bit not crystal clear, let's put it that way, where exactly is the gate going to be put there?
If I could interject there, Chair, if you don't mind. You're correct. There's 1 gate proposed, approximately halfway along the proposed fence, and approximately opposite the northern end of the closest properties. It reflects the position of some existing steps that rise up from the rear of those 2 properties, up between the gabion baskets and onto the road. That gate, it won't be a locked gate. It'll simply be there for residents to use. And the other properties, which, as Gareth mentioned, are located further down this slope, they have their own means of getting up onto Furnace Row via some existing steps over at the northern end, on the left-hand side of the drawing in front of you there now. And their access is going to be unimpeded by this proposed fence. So this shouldn't be any impediment to existing residents from getting access up onto Furnace Row. And indeed, the fence is only proposed in the areas where there is a significant drop off the edge of the gabion baskets.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I got another few questions. I don't know whether these should be put to the planning officers or to Barry Davis, but it is about the height of the fence.
Well, you won't have the opportunity to ask the applicant again if you don't ask now, Clive.
Right. Okay. Just want to make sure I don't want to get in any hot water with anyone. So, according to the report that I read, it says here, this has been the result of a consultation exercise, and there were 10 letters of objection were received from local residents. So that's the first consultation. Following the reconsultation, October 2025, a further 4 objections were received. So that's 2. The second reconsultation in March 2026 resulted in additional 4 objections. My mathematics means that, am I right in saying there's been 18 letters of objection? And as a result of those objections, the height of the fence has been reduced, which are on top of these gabions. Is that correct, Mr. Barry Davis?
Yes, that is correct. The height of the fence, it was initially proposed at 2 meters in height, and it's been dropped down to 1.5 meters. And 1.5 meters represents the lowest possible height, because we have to bear in mind that, you know, this route, the Taff Trail here, is used by fast-moving cyclists, but also as a bridle way with horse riders. And ideally, you'd actually have a higher fence than 1.5 meters to protect horse riders. But in this event, we have proposed a compromise solution down at 1.5.
So, through you, Chair, that compromise was arrived at with, was there a discussion with all the residents? Were they able to take part in a meeting with yourself, all the residents, and come to that agreement? Or how did that come about, the reduction to 1.5?
Is that to me, councillor, or to to Gareth?
Yes. No, it's to you.
Yeah, well, we listened to the comments received during the course of the application, and as a result, it was decided to reduce the height of the fence accordingly to reflect the wishes of the local residents.
And was
so that occurred during the course of the application.
Yeah. Was that as a result of a meeting that you held with the residents face to face, or was that via, I don't know, email or phone calls? How was that?
There was no meeting as such. We reviewed the consultation responses in conjunction with information furnished to us by Gareth, and as part of that process, we agreed to reduce the height down to 1.5.
So this again to the question, Mr. Barry Davis, the gabions, 1.5 meters. For me, I mean, British, is that, you mentioned the chest height, is that approximately 4 feet or more?
Yeah, yes. My conversion to old money isn't great, but I think that's broadly correct.
Yeah. So you're talking about a new fence of 4 feet or more on top of the gabions.
That's correct. Yes. Albeit they're railings, they're hoop top style railings that you might find, you know, near a front garden or something like that.
Right. So from your professional point of view, Mr. Barry Davis, you've carried out an evaluation as to whether the fence will create an overbearing or enclosing effect on the cottages below. And how does this comply with the local development plan amenity policies?
Yeah, there's a balance to be struck here between providing a barrier in effect to prevent anyone running or walking, cycling, or horse riding along the Taff Trail from, you know, tripping on the edge of the gabions, or if they meet a car coming in the opposite direction, being forced off the carriageway and inadvertently tumbling over the side. So there needs to be some sort of restraint there of some form. But equally, we're very mindful that the residents, particularly of the two properties that you can see the glimpsed view in the image there on screen, we're very mindful that the upper floors of those properties will be looking out towards that fence. So, as I say, initially it was proposed as a 2 meter high weld mesh type of fence that had a much closer, tighter gauge to it. in light of the concerns raised, it was agreed to reduce that, to change it both in height and style to the bow top railings, which are much more permeable, and they're also going to be powder coated in a dark green color, so that they'll, when viewed from a distance, they'll almost merge with the green backdrop, which runs up the side of the valley there as well. So yes, the design and style has been very much considered with residents in mind, but also bearing in mind that we have to provide some level of full protection in that area, particularly given how frequently this section of the Taff Trail is used in this location.
Yeah.
Any more clarity?
Yes, I am, Chair. So introducing this 4-foot high fence on top of the scabions in your proposal, where is the duty to conserve the character of an historical area?
Well, you're correct. There is a duty to try and conserve character, as well as providing the health and safety protection as well. We feel that this is an appropriate compromise solution that doesn't impact on the heritage value of the cottages, which I should just add again that these cottages, whilst they are undoubtedly historic and have been around for a very long time, that they aren't listed, and they don't lie within the conservation area. But that's not to diminish their heritage value, but I think it's important to point that out. And yeah, we consider that the character of the railings now proposed, both in terms of the height, the style, and the colouring, is appropriate and in character with the area.
And Mr. Barry Davis is another question for you, through you, Chair. It's as a result of 3 consultations, the height of it has been reduced, according to the report, to 1.5. It's impossible to reduce it any further.
Yes, Councillor, I believe that it is. It simply wouldn't provide the full protection that is necessary in this very. It's quite a vulnerable position, these gabion baskets. The Furnace Row narrows along this section. You often find parked cars on the opposite side of the road, such that the carriageway is relatively narrow. You can see there in one of the images a car parked, and certainly in the evening there are even more cars parked along there, so that you do have conflicts between cars and between, so particularly in the evenings and summer evenings, when you've got runners and pedestrians and cyclists taking advantage of the nice weather. You will have multiple users potentially in conflict with each other as they try and traverse this relatively narrow section of what is a 2-way highway. So it's vital that there is some full protection there, and given that some of these users are fast moving cyclists traveling at speed, any lower than 1.5, there's quite a risk. If you're sitting on a relatively high bike, there's a risk that you could collide with the fence and go over the top. And similarly with horse riders, who are at even more risk. And in fact, as I say, the relevant guidance for horse riders suggests a 1.8 metre wide fence, a high fence. So we feel that we've compromised and lowered the height to the minimum possible.
So, Chair, Mr. Davis, in your opinion, then reducing that fence on top of these gabions to either 1 metre or 1.2 is impossible.
That's my opinion, Councillor, yes.
So opinions could vary, would you say?
Well, yes. I mean, what I would say is that the guidance that is out there, that's issued by under TD 1906, which is requirement for road restraint systems for trunk roads and motorways, BD 2904 design criteria for footbridges, and LTN 208, which talks about parapet height, and indeed the guidance provided by Sustrans all recommends an absolute minimum height of restraint, and I think 1.5 is really at that lower end of what is suitable. So there's opinion and there's informed opinion, and I feel that 1.5 is very much informed opinion.
Yeah. Well, 2 last questions, Chair. You mentioned
to see if any other councillor wants to ask anything.
Yeah. So has any other councillor got any questions on clarity? We will be going to general questions from councillors at the end, but at this moment in time, it's clarity I'm looking for. No, so it's back to Clive.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Has a biodiversity assessment been carried out for this application? And if so, what evidence does it provide to justify the level of ecological enhancement being proposed?
Councillor, no, there hasn't been a dedicated ecology survey undertaken, what we might call a preliminary ecological assessment. A preliminary ecological assessment is not required for every planning application, but there is a duty to provide net biodiversity benefit as part of every application. So whilst it's acknowledged by, I think, all parties that there's no ecological impact arising from the installation of this fencing, there still is nonetheless a duty upon us to provide some biodiversity enhancement. And that's why it's been agreed between all parties, including your ecologist, that a modest but proportionate amount of biodiversity enhancement would be provided, and that's going to be in the form of a pole-mounted bat and bird box feature, which will be installed near the hedge line on the opposite side of the road, which is the most suitable location for commuting bats along the side of the woodland.
Thanks. And through you, Chair, I think you mentioned the figure of the number of users on the Taff Trail at this point. Did you say 630,000?
Well, those are the figures for the annual users of the Taff Trail.
Right.
Not necessarily 630,000 going past these particular properties, but because that data doesn't exist. But there are 630,000 approximately users of the Taff Trail overall. And as you know, that runs all the way from Brecon down to Cardiff. So
yeah. So you've clearly got evidence going back a number of years for you to make this application for this fence. How many accidents have been recorded, or say the last 5 or 10 years? How many accidents have occurred to mean that this fence has got to be this height?
I'm not aware of any specific accidents, councillor, but the Harris fencing has been up for quite some time, and that in itself is obviously preventing any users from going over the side currently. But of
Right,
course,
Mr.
an
Davies,
accident could happen at
Can
any
I,
time.
Mr. Davis, can
Yes.
I see if, when we get the general comments from the councillors, our planning officers have that type of information?
Right, okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Exactly, Clay.
Thank you. That's it, yeah, thanks.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Mr. Davis. Now we'll go to the objector in this matter, Michelle Hardy. Michelle, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me and see me?
I can hear you, but I can see you now. Yes, right.
I know.
As with Mr. Davis, we'll give you 5 minutes to speak,
Okay.
but I'll give you a time for you to introduce yourself and who you are and what you represent, okay? So if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself now, I will tell you when your 5 minutes start.
Okay, so I'm Michelle, and I've been asked by the residents of Furnace Row who are objecting to the planning proposal to speak to you today.
Okay, thank you. You've got your 5 minutes starting now.
Okay, so the residents' concerns include the following. Firstly, the proposed fence height exceeds 1 metre in height. This alone raises immediate planning concerns as it goes beyond what would typically be considered acceptable on a highway. No compelling reason, although Barry has just been talking about the reason that they want to put it up is for safety. But we, the residents, believe that a lower fence on the road edge, because the gabion baskets are quite wide, a lower fence at 1 metre, which is the planning regulations, or even 1.2 metres, which would be lower, would still prevent accidents. And just to clarify, my parents have lived here for 20 years now, and no one has fallen off the wall since 2011, since before then, since they've lived here. The fence panels are proposed to be installed on top of the gabion baskets, which are already slightly raised above the floor, meaning that the total effective height will be close to 2 metres still. And the houses of Furnace Row are set below the level of Taffs Trail, so they, like Barry said, they'll be nearly up to the roof, and that significantly increases its visual and physical impact. When approaching the steps leading up to the trail, you are below the trail. So although Barry said it will be 1.5 metres up to your chest, I'm 1.6, so it wouldn't be up to my chest. When you are stepped down on the steps, it's going to be significantly higher than 1.5, in fact, nearer probably to more than 2 metres high. And when you look down the long 80 metres of the fencing, you can't see out of it. And like Barry said, there's fast bikes, electric bikes, horses going along there. You're going to have to step out into the road to see past it. And I would really implore anyone who involved in this decision making to come and have a look up at the Taffs Trail now and see just how intrusive the Harris fencing is, because that proposed fencing is going to be as high as the Harris fencing nearly. While the residents acknowledge that the revised design of the fence is agreeable, they don't mind the hooped top. The proposed green colour is not. It doesn't align with the colour or scale of any existing boundaries in the area, and the inconsistency further reinforces the sense that the development's out of place. And the residents have been shocked and really confused by the addition of a gate on the stairs. The gate's entirely unnecessary according to them. There's no clear justification for it, and it's going to cause more problems than it solves. Accessibility is a major concern. 50% of the residents of Furnace Row are over 60. And although Barry said that people can use the stairs at the end, there's a lot more stairs. So whereas where the gate is going to be, there's only 3 steps. So people come and use those ones instead to get up and down them. Some of the residents have mobility challenges. They use aids such as sticks and crutches. Someone uses a wheelchair. So opening and closing a gate, particularly on those steps, is going to be really difficult, if not impossible for some. It's going to provide difficulties for residents and their services. Some residents are cyclists, so they're going to have to try and get their bikes out through that gate. Deliveries are already challenging due to the road layout and the steps up to the house, and they're going to become more difficult. And as was mentioned, the refuse collections are going to be negatively impacted because the bins and then for number 1 Furnace Row are going to have to be left in the road, which could increased risk of antisocial behaviour if they're knocked over, taken or played with. And then there's also unresolved questions about how the gate's going to function. Depending on which way it opens, it's going to either obstruct the entrance into number 1 Furnace Row or the public footpath leading to 8 to 13 Furnace Row. And if it's left permanently open, which it could be, it's going to serve no purpose and it'll be unnecessary to be there. We don't understand either why the fence isn't being capped off at that end where the gate is, because people can still get on the wall. They can climb on the steps and get onto the wall. There are biodiversity concerns. So finally, I've been asked to raise some serious concerns about the proposed biodiversity measures by a resident called Alice at Furnace Row, who is an early careers ecologist. She says that the installation of a single bat and bird box without any supporting ecological survey appears to be a token gesture rather than a meaningful attempt to enhance biodiversity. Historically, she says the site supported a vegetated bank, which has since been replaced by the gabion baskets, and a more appropriate approach would be to restore what's been lost rather than attempting to enhance what is already a suboptimal baseline. And given the wider responsibilities of Do Cymru, there's an expectation that developments like this should have a positive example, and that means moving away from minimal box-based solutions and trying to move towards habitat-led biodiversity improvements. So in
sorry, you can sum up.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
in conclusion, the residents, they're disappointed that they weren't meaningfully consulted prior to or during the process by Do Cymru. There's been a lack of engagement and has resulted in proposals that do not reflect the needs or the concerns of the community, and they still would welcome an opportunity to have constructive discussion with Do Cymru about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Sadi. Have we got any questions again for clarity from this person? No? No. Okay. Sorry?
My question can be by the gate.
Oh, okay, right. We now go to Councillor Gareth Lewis. Are you there, Gareth?
I am, thank you, Chair.
As I said, Gareth, in respect to the others, you get 5 minutes as well, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the Plymouth Ward councillors and the residents we represent. And firstly, I'd like to say that we fully recognise the importance of safety. We all want the embankment to be secure and support sensible measures that genuinely do improve public safety. Our concerns today are not about opposing safety, they're about ensuring the solution is proportionate, appropriate for this location, and does not create new problems for residents or indeed the wider community. The first issue is the visual impact and harm to the character of the area. The proposed fence will sit on top of the existing gabion baskets, giving it an effective height close to 2 metres. This is a substantial and visually dominant structure in a very sensitive location. Furnace Row has a distinct character, and the temporary Harris fencing already in place has shown how intrusive a tall, engineered structure can indeed be. The proposed fence, although permanent, would still be almost as high and have a similar dominating effect on the area. Its colour and industrial appearance do not reflect the materials or scale of boundary treatments in the area, and the result would be an incongruous and out-of-place feature. This is, in my view, contrary to the LDP, which requires development to respect local character and avoid unacceptable visual intrusion. The second concern relates to residential amenity. Because the fence sits above the gabion wall, it will tower over the cottages below, creating a sense of enclosure and an overbearing impact for residents, particularly those living closest to the embankment. Approaching from the steps, visibility can be significantly reduced, and residents may have to step into the road to check for oncoming vehicles or cyclists. This is not a safety improvement, it introduces a new hazard. The LDP requires development to protect residential amenity, and in this case, the proposal does indeed do the opposite. The third issue is harm to the historic environment. Furnace Row forms part of an historic landscape, and its character contributes to the wider landscape of outstanding historical interest. Introducing a tall engineered fence in such a prominent position would erode the historic setting and diminish the visual qualities that make this area special. Again, I feel this conflicts the LDP, which requires development to conserve and enhance the historic environment. A further concern is accessibility and inclusive design. Residents were surprised to see a gate included in the proposal. This gate sits at the top of a steep access route used daily by residents, including older people and those with mobility challenges. Opening and closing the gate on steps is not just inconvenient for some, it could be physically impossible. The gate would also make everyday life more difficult. Cyclists would struggle to move bikes in and out. Deliveries, which are already challenging, as we've heard, due to the layout of the street, would become even more difficult. And refuse collections would be hindered, and depending on how the gate opens, it could obstruct either private access or a public footpath. Planning policy requires design, and this proposal does not meet that standard. Sorry, planning permission requires inclusive design, I should say. Finally, there are concerns about biodiversity. Replacing the former vegetated bank with gabions has already reduced the site's habitat value. Adding a single bat or bird box does not constitute meaningful biodiversity enhancement and falls short of the expectations set out in Planning Policy Wales. Residents, as I mentioned earlier, are not opposed to safety improvements. They simply want a solution that is proportionate, respects the character of Furnace Row, protects residential amenity, supports accessibility, and enhances biodiversity. This proposal does not achieve this. It conflicts with the LDP and with the design and placemaking principles of Planning Policy Wales. For these reasons, I respectfully ask members to refuse the application. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. I'll go to our planning department. Have they got any things for clarity on this before we go to general questions? No? Okay. I'll open it up. Sorry,
if I could
Barry.
just jump in, we'd be happy to remove the gate because that's clearly of concern to both Michelle and to Councillor Gareth. I think we could happily remove the gate from the proposal and happily change the colour from a green to maybe a black, if that would be acceptable.
I'll go to the planners. Has anybody got anything to say from planning?
I would that we could comfortably accommodate that. Whether the gate is there or not would probably regard as de minimis, to be perfectly honest. I don't see that as an issue.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to general questions from the rest of the planning committee. Scott?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Officers, you know, as stated by obviously lady whose parents live in Furnace Row, has there been any historical reportings of anyone falling, any horses or vehicles breaching the obviously pre-existing space between the Taff Trail and the houses of Furnace Row? Because obviously, as you mentioned, the last 20 years their parents have been living there. There's been no obviously nothing reported, and I've obviously lived down in that area for a very long time, walked that trail several thousands of times, and I've not heard of anything happening in that respect.
We are not aware of any accidents having occurred in that area.
Fabulous. My second question then is, to officers' knowledge, prior to the Harris fencing being in place, and before we get the new fencing, has there ever been any kind of fencing along that stretch of the Taff Trail in front of those houses in Furnace Row and Ashford?
My understanding of that is no. Prior to the main rupture that caused the embankment to collapse, it was just a grassed embankment.
Thank you. And my final question then, Guy, is how much more of a drop exists now in comparison to what it was like prior to the Gabion being installed?
I can't answer that question. I'm not aware what the site was like prior to the Gabion being installed. I understand it was installed some 10 years ago.
Yeah, appreciate that. It looks probably about half a foot, sort of more of a drop. You know, I can see Michelle nodding there. I'm obviously familiar with the house in question, as someone who's been here a couple of times. But yeah, it's a bit yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, go on.
No, that's it. That's my question. Thank you, Gar.
Okay, sorry, Gar. Have you got anything to add to what Scott was saying?
Sorry, I think it was me. I jumped in there. Sorry. It was just to say that.
We can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me.
If we can't hear you,
Louder, Dave.
please.
Okay.
Mic volume might be down.
The mic is on.
Yeah, you just need to speak a bit louder.
Oh, right. Oh, hello. Oh, okay. Do that. Yeah. As you can see in the photo on the right, you can see there's a bit of what remains of maybe a bit of the grass embankment, and it would have probably taken where you've got the existing footpath there. It would have obviously taken a sort of a fairly sort of direct line from the edge of the path there up to the edge of the carriageway, I would imagine. There are some early photos of on Google Maps of the embankment, which shows it obviously to be more gradual than what it is now. But it does look like in certain sections along the gabions there, it could be, you know, more than a metre drop on the inside of the wall. It's shallow in certain places because it grades down on the ends. But in the middle, it's probably, looking at the photo there, it's probably just over a metre or so, maybe 1.5 metre in itself, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dave, and thanks for highlighting, obviously, that there are historical images, even though we, you know, we don't tend to be happy with, obviously, Google images every now and again, but this does show historically there is quite a substantial difference.
Just 1 second. I want to ask the officer a question.
Yes, you need to ask them for making amendments to that. Shall I ask them? Gareth, it's just a question that the chair has asked me. The applicant suggested that the gate could be removed, and you said that was de minimis. In relation to condition 2, would there need to be any amendment to the wording of it?
Have a look a second.
Condition 2 relates to the list of approved plans.
That's right. So if
the approved plans show gates to be located, so there would be a need to omit those references from the drawings, and also probably there would be a need to remove the drawing which relates specifically to the design of the gates. Similarly, if there was a concern regards to the colour of the railings, I know the applicant has opted to go for a colour that tries to reflect the sort of the natural landscape. But if there was an alternative colour, then obviously that would need to be updated on the drawings as well. I think our preference is that, you know, dark green is probably the most appropriate for the area. The only alternative that you would normally see traditionally, I suppose, would be black to kind of represent sort of black cast iron railings or something like that. But I don't know how the applicant feels about that on that.
That would be fine, David.
Oh, and sorry
to
add,
David, that
if need be, we could put a condition that requires us to agree the colour of the railings, so that could be dealt with, you know, separately if need be.
I'm just conscious that if members were minded to approve it, it would be as per condition 2 as worded at the moment, unless you're proposing some alternative.
Well, the condition would need to reflect a revised a revision of those drawings where it relates to the gates, essentially. So there would be a requirement to amend those conditions slightly, yes.
And I believe Councillor Salmon has his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. So as not to waste time, and as the applicant is willing to make changes to the application, I believe one of the main things that residents have raised is reducing the height from 1.5 metres down to 1 metre, if that was acceptable as well to the applicant. Would that be something that you could look at?
I mean, potentially, if there was a desire to reduce it, given the other changes, but obviously the application before us is being considered based on that detail. I think the applicants made their position clear, at least that the need for the railings to be of a suitable height is necessary for safety reasons, and they've already reduced it down. So there's, sometimes there needs to be a balance between, the different competing objectives, and in this case we've got one of aesthetics and impact on residential amenity versus the need for sufficient safety. Perhaps the removal of the gates is a reasonable further compromise on this matter.
Thanks, David. It's just I was thinking, I'm sure there's many places in the Taff Trail that have no fencing at all, with a lot bigger drop, to be honest, and houses. And I believe planning law does say that, bear with me now, I've got it here, UK planning law, and I think Welsh is the same. In the UK, the maximum fence height without planning permission is 2 metres for rear and side boundaries, and 1 metre for front gardens or fences adjacent to a public highway. And I think this is probably adjacent to a public highway, to be honest, just like most streets in Merthyr Tydfil, and you don't see many people, to be honest, tumbling over the top of a wall.
My only sort of thoughts on that is, whilst from our perspective, we may not, from a visual design point of view, may not have too much concern with it being only a 1.2 high railing. I'm just mindful that our highway engineers have considered it on the basis of a 1.5. And so I don't know if they would consider the need to, whether they would have the need to reconsider their position as to whether 1.5 or 1.2 makes any difference from a highway safety point of view.
Thank you, David.
Councillor Page.
Has Councillor Summer finished?
He said that. Good.
All right. Well, unfortunately, David Cross, we never seem to see an engineer in the planning committee, so we can't ask the question. It's what's in the report. And I think Councillor Salmon, Chair, makes a fair point. As a result of this meeting now, the planning consultant of Welsh Water has accepted 2 of the points from the residents. And I think, frankly, the question about the height on top of the gabions could probably be settled with a sensible meeting, frankly, of minds.
So have we got a question on that, Clayton?
Well, my view, Chair, for what it's worth, number one, all the members online can't see it, but there are pictures on a big screen which are all blurred. They may as well have put it all in black. I can't see what other members can see. And in this particular instance, because the sticking point, Chair, seems to be that it's height, and we don't seem far apart. My view is that perhaps on this occasion, members need to go down there to see it in person with the representative from Welsh Water, and then after that, come to a conclusion.
Yeah, so is that the question you're asking? Should we go down and see it then, Clive?
I would, in this particular, I mean, I don't know with the Constitution, because that's changed. It's got to be nowadays an absolutely major issue to have a site meeting. We don't have site meetings at all now, ever. And in this occasion, I think it definitely warrants it, frankly. So what I'm suggesting is that if we can't come to agreement about the height, that this matter is deferred, pending a site meeting there, together with the residents being present and the member, Mr. Barry Davis from Welsh Water.
Craig.
That was Craig gone.
Gone home.
Yep, so, sorry, can you hear me there? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I think it's within members' gift to defer the decision, and they would clearly need to state the reason why it is being deferred. I would suggest trying to avoid referring to a site visit in the reason for refusal. I think, as you've alluded to there, I think it would be unlikely to sort of meet the threshold as to what we would carry out a site visit for. However, if it was to be deferred, subject to further discussions taking place between the applicant, the planners and highways, that could be a way forward.
Can be done.
And the residents.
No, the resident. Craig?
I think we've got the full picture from the residents today. I think Ms Hardy's put across the points very, very eloquently, and I think we'd be able to take those into consideration in any discussions then between the officers and the applicant.
So are you proposing,
Yeah.
Councillor Jones, that the matter be deferred?
Yes, I move that this matter be deferred pending further discussions with the engineers.
Yeah.
And the representative from Welsh Water.
That's fine. So is there anyone prepared to second that
that.
recommendation?
Yeah.
So in relation to the other councillors online and in the room, are they in agreement that this matter be deferred for those discussions to take place and then to come back to another planning committee? Yeah, could we take that to the vote? All councillors in agreement that the matter be deferred? 1, 2, 3. Can't see the numbers up there.
Can I
shake down the slides, please? so we can see
Declan
the
plus
hands?
4, I think it was.
Four. Five. How many have we got?
Yeah.
Was the other member?
Got 5 online.
There's
isn't
5 online, is that 3?
Yeah,
Oh,
3. That's
yeah.
carried, Chair. This will
That's-
be deferred. Deferred, sorry.
Deferred, yeah.
Very good.
So we
Yes,
can
it's-
like that.
Move to the next item now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I thank everybody that was involved in this application? As we say, it is now deferred, so we'll move on.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. 1 second. So we'll go on to item number 7, which is P260032. Yeah, Lee, is that a legacy hand? Or have you got a question?
No.
Right, yes. Sorry, I'll start again. Okay. Yeah. I'll start again. Item number 7, P260032, Greenwich House, Aberfan Road, Aberfan, CF48, to consider report to Director of Neighbourhood Services. And who will be taking this today?
This will be me again, Chair, I'm afraid,
Okay, Gareth, go ahead.
for all the good ends. Firstly, my apologies, I should have walked you through the slides on the last application. The application is presented to the Consideration Committee at the request of Councillor Roberts to fully consider the concerns raised by local residents in respect to the proposed development. The application site is a 5-bedroom terrace property located in central Aberavon, an area of mixed uses, including residential, shops and a pub. There's no off-street parking currently proposed as part of the application, which is to change the use of the property from a dwelling house, use class C3, to a 6-bedroom house in multiple occupation, use class C4. No physical alterations are proposed to the externals of the property. Planning history reveals the conversion of the property to a single dwelling dated from 2002. Its previous use before then was unclear, but I suspect it might have been a shop. Constellations have raised no objections to the proposals. Do you want to slide down a little bit, Dave, on the slides? Maybe. Or Webb's going to have you. You see the aerial shot there. You see the roundabout area. The cursor is more or less where the application property is. Is centre Aberfan. You're probably all far more familiar with than I am. Policy is broadly supportive of the proposed development as long as it's within settlement limits and meets other policy requirements. As I said, physically, there are no external alterations that would affect the character or appearance of the area, and whilst properties occupied by non-family households have the potential to change the character of the area, it is not evident that allowing this application will result in over-concentration of HMOs in the area. In terms of impact on residential amenity, the proposed development would not be significantly different to the existing use as a 5-bedroom dwelling. And whilst the proposal might have the potential to deliver more noise or other forms of disturbance than the existing use, this would not be considered so significant in planning terms that it wouldn't justify a refusal of planning permission. Look at the slide in front of you there. The layout fundamentally stays the same. The only difference really is that on the ground floor towards the rear of the property, what was called the dining room would become the 6th bedroom. Noise and antisocial behaviour on the part of residents, should it arise, is a matter for the management of the company, and should there be a statutory nuisance in environmental health. Criminal matters are matters of the police, not the planning department. The proposal will not result in any more overlooking or loss of privacy over and above existing levels within the street. Bin and recycling provision could be improved with dedicated storage facilities within the property. It's notable that there's no objection from environmental health in that regard. Ecological enhancement, should members choose to approve the application, would be delivered through an appropriately worded planning condition you see at the end of the report. Parking and highway considerations, though the street is the main road and it's heavily busy, the difference between a 5-bedroom house and a 6-bedroom HMO is not an issue that the head of engineering highways has raised objection to. In fact, the application does involve a certain amount of incremental gain, in as much as at least we get some cycle storage out of it. Proximity to the village centre also makes the use of the sustainable form of transport more readily available to residents should the application proven, and recommendation is to approve the application. If you can go to the last slide, they did a couple of slides. I think that helps in terms of perspective as well. You see 2 shots there, obviously from Google Maps. The top one shows the direction looking south along Bronheilo Terrace, and the low one shows the direction from further away looking north. And yeah, that's the recommendations to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll now go on to the public speaking element of the application. And I believe the applicant is with us tonight to speak.
Yeah, that's me, Ed.
Yeah, hello there. I'll give you a second or two to introduce yourself and who you are and your position within the firm or company, and then you have 5 minutes to speak on the matter.
Perfect. Thank you.
Start now.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for bearing the time to look at my application here. My name is Edward McGill. I've owned Greenwich House since 2014. From when it was a derelict house, I converted it when it had planning to be a 5-bedroom home. So I converted it into a 5-bedroom home at the time. Previous use for the property was a hardware store, probably prior to 2002. It is a very large property, and it's a large 5-bedroom home, which is nice in many respects, but equally it's probably a bit daunting to some tenants of its size. My sort of reason initially to go for an HMO license was that a previous tenant, who I assumed it was a family, the letting agents thought it was a family that was sort of renting the property, found out that it was actually some local construction workers who were helping with the infrastructure of Merthyr Tydfil, and they were sort of subletting the property out to all of their work colleagues, and it was later found out from the management company that they were occupying the property in this manner, which obviously we had to remove them for that purpose because it was we did not have an HMO license. They were sleeping on inflatable beds with sheets over the windows, and it was not acceptable. So I'm also just trying to. This application is to mitigate that potentiality in the future. However, but the plan is to kind of take this forward as being fully managed, and as an HMO, so ensuring all of the fire safety is correct. Room sizes, I don't know if you can obviously see by that floor plan, I don't think we have any problems with room sizes. The property is very big, and obviously making sure that there's adequate sort of waste management facilities there for a property catering for 6 people. I would going on to sort of sustainable transports, etc. Yes, there is a local bus service, train stations are nearby, and happy to consider putting a bicycle storage there to enhance that aspect of transport. There is no material difference to the building. The building envelope on the outside is remaining exactly the same as what it is currently, and again internally there's no changes there. This is just changing the class of the building. There's historically there is no evidence that suggests that occupants of an HMO should inherently cause any more antisocial behaviour than a family would. So I've equally owned HMOs in other locations, and I've not had that issue. As long as they're managed properly, and relevant references, etc., done, and people are sort of looked after properly, then you should limit that from ever happening. Just trying to think of any other points I sort of had. So there's always a demand for HMOs, for HMOs, and obviously having some diverse housing, especially within Merthyr, to provide some high quality affordable housing for young professionals. So that might be sort of people wanting to obviously leave home, or equally people coming to work within the area and trying to find a sort of accommodation for short term or long term. But yes, there is no ecological impact. However, happy to consider biodiversity enhancement in relation to this application. That's me done.
Okay, thank you very much. Have we any questions for clarity first?
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Jones.
McGill, you mentioned that when you purchased this property in 2014, you increased the number of bedrooms. I note in the report that one of the existing 5 bedrooms is in the attic.
Yes.
Can you tell me the size of that bedroom in the attic, and how do you gain access to it? Is there a proper staircase up to that attic bedroom?
Yeah, that was all. It was all signed off by building control, and there's a staircase that kind of takes you up to the attic space.
Right, and it's I haven't seen the sizes of the of that particular room, but I presume it's a fair sized bedroom then.
Yeah, it's quite a large room. Yes.
Right. You mentioned that you own HMOs in other areas, I presume, throughout England and Wales?
Not in Wales, but in England, yes.
Right. Could you tell me, because you did refer to it, about it being managed, how would this HMO for the application approval be managed by yourself? Do you engage a management company, and you say it's your first venture in Wales? How do you manage properties elsewhere?
So obviously with the locality of this property, I would take on board a management agent to manage this, where they will probably have more regular visits than what you would have on a normal sort of tenancy. So on a normal tenancy, it'd probably be a 6-month visit, whereas an HMO you can be more sort of quarterly visits, just to ensure that the property has been run accordingly.
Experience shows in some of these HMOs, for example, you mentioned young professionals, but depends on the tenancies that you have there. If there are issues, late at night, or especially on a Friday night or a weekend, would you have the facilities of your management agency being able to deal with that without any problems?
That would be down to the management agents and their contracts. I couldn't say that right now, but that would be down to them. But then it would be the same issue as if it was a family and someone was causing a problem in a family.
Yeah. But in this case, you'll have 6 new tenants there, and you never know what could happen there. But from what you say, that if something occurs on a weekend or a Friday night, you'll be able to send somebody there and resolve the issues.
I think equally, if you sort of had it as a family, you could have more than 6 people living in this property, arguably, of a variety of different ages, and there could be a higher impact to the locale.
And you mentioned young professionals. Your experience elsewhere with HMOs, they're all young professionals that house in your HMOs.
Yeah, young professionals. I've also got mature professionals as well in one property, which works absolutely fine. So it's as long as you get the right sort of demographic of people within there, people will be happy to live amongst one another.
And I presume, Mr. McGill, that you have a contract for each of the tenancies?
There will be, yes.
Yeah, so they will be subject to whatever contract that you issue to them.
Yeah.
Do you have a high turnover of tenants in your other HMOs?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are we any other questions? Clarity at this moment? No. Okay, so we'll continue with the public speaking, and I'll go to Ward Member Darren Roberts. Darren, are you there? Darren, is you online?
Darren's still online, Matthew.
Yes.
Yeah, laptop was playing up, but do apologise. Chair, planning committee members and officers, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Darren, before you start, can I just give you the 5-minute warning? That's all. You've got to speak for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I won't be that long, Chair. Thank you anyway. Chair, planning committee members and officers, thank you for allowing me to speak at this evening's committee meeting. Forgive me if this sounds familiar, because it is. Almost the same statement that I read out at a previous planning meeting to object on behalf of residents to a different HMO application. That was 44 Aberfan Road. That property is literally 100 yards away from this particular property. So, you are familiar with the area. On behalf of residents of Aberfan, I would like to go on record and object to the proposed change of use of Greenwich House, Aberfan Road, Aberfan, CF48, to a house of multiple occupancy, and objections made on planning grounds. The proposal constitutes an over-intensive form of development that is not appropriate to the scale, layout, or residential context of the property based in its location. The intensified use would result in material harm to neighbouring residential amenity arising from increased noise, activity and movement associated with high occupancy use. The applicant fails to satisfactorily demonstrate that the development would not result in unacceptable parking stress and is likely to increase in vehicle ownership. Combined with the absence of adequate off-street parking provision, this would exacerbate existing on-street parking pressures, and there are many in the surrounding areas, and give rise to highway safety concerns. As worth pointing out that the property is right on a junction and there's double yellow lines spanning the road in both directions. Insufficient detail has been provided in respect to the refuse and recycling storage and management. Given the nature of the proposed use, this raises a clear risk of visual harm to the street scene and obstruction of the public realm. What you'll notice from the picture that was in the slide earlier, Chair, it's right on the public highway with a narrow pavement. That's where refuse and recycling is being collected from these properties. There's enough room there for one family's recycling, but if you had 6 lots of recycling boxes and refuse bins, then that's going to take up the whole of the pavement. Other concerns are as follows. The property sits in the middle of 2 primary schools that are very busy childcare setting. Just 2 doors away from this property houses vulnerable adults. The extreme proximity of a house of multiple occupancy to this particular property is of great concern. I'd also like to point out that there is currently a large family living at the property. They would most probably be displaced by the change of use to a HMO. They engage with the community, their children attend local schools, and there's no guarantee that they're not going to be displaced. The property has 5 bedrooms, so why change it to 6? It could quite adequately be 5-bedroomed. Well, I can answer that on behalf of residents. It's to maximise profit. Chair, I represent the residents who put their faith in me as one of their elected members for Aberfan, Merthyr and Mount Pleasant. I have and always will represent these residents who elected me to the very best of my ability. To sum up, this proposal threatens to introduce an overcrowded, high-impact HMO that could irreversibly damage the character, safety and livability of the area. Approval would sanction the deliberate conversion of a family home with a settled family in residence into a profit-driven occupancy unit with predictable and possible unacceptable consequences. The development would impact chronic noise congestion, waste issues and transient occupancy onto a residential road that runs through the very heart of Aberfan. The proposal could prioritise maximum rent extraction over minimum standards of dignity, safety and fundamental community impact. And for those reasons set out above, application P260032 should be refused. I hope that members of the committee agree with these comments that I have raised tonight on behalf of very worried residents of Aberfan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Have anybody on the committee got any questions to clarity, Councillor Roberts?
Yes, please, Chair. Darren, you mentioned about the property few doors away from Greenwich House.
Yeah.
Could you clarify, Darren, what that property is used for?
Yeah, at the moment, Councillor Jones, there's vulnerable adults living there. They have 24-hour care. They're very self-sufficient. They look after themselves through the care facility. I think there's either 3 or 4 vulnerable adults in residence, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And it's the other side of the shop. So if you look at the property in question, Greenwich House, it's on the left-hand side. You've got the post office then and the Premier store, and then you got the property on the other side. So it is literally 2 doors away. You know, that care facility has been in place for several years.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Sorry, Michelle.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Councillor Lee Davis's laptop has crashed, so he can't vote, so he's had to leave the meeting. Secondly, my question to Councillor Roberts. You mentioned about a previous application for HMO in the same street.
Yeah.
Could you just remind me, what was the outcome of that? And if it went to any appeal, and what was the outcome of that? Please?
Yes, certainly, Councillor Jones. The outcome of that application was refuse. It is, you could actually see it from one of the slides. It's literally 100 yards away. It was refused on parking congestion and amenity. And at this moment in time, there has been no appeal from the applicant.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Have the officers got anything to say on this matter before we move on to general comment?
Yes, please.
Sorry.
Yeah, so just a couple of quick points to raise there. In relation to some of Councillor Roberts' comments there, I just feel it's necessary to remind the committee that planning can't be taking the user of a property into consideration as we've been to the realms of making assumptions. It's only the use. And appreciating Councillor Roberts' concerns there and representing his residents, but just to remind committee that we need to be taking the use into consideration, not the user. And the second one is that this might have come up as part of other questions anyway, but as this property is for a 6-bedroom HMO that would be over 3 stories, this would be subject to the mandatory licensing scheme through environmental health.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to general questions. Have we got any questions from the committee? Right.
Yes, and it's the question is to Craig Watkins, as head of planning. As you say, this is a 3-bed, 3-story, 6 bedrooms. So that's when the license is required from environmental health. Can you tell me, Craig, why the license has got to be applied for if the planning application is approved and the license is not considered before it's approved, knowing full well that there's got to be an outcome for a license there because it's 3 stories and 6 bedrooms.
Yeah, I suppose what we are considering as planning committee here now is the principle of the use itself. What the licensing regime would do would look at some of the details as to how that use will actually operate and then be managed. I suppose in some ways it's almost a similar process of a property gaining planning permission and then having to go through sort of building regs to sort of look at some of the finer detail after permission has been granted.
Yeah, I've never understood, to you, Craig, why this is not considered in conjunction with a planning application before it's considered by the planning committee. But obviously, there's a rule somewhere deep in the constitution which says it can only be done after it's been dealt with by planning.
They are, perhaps I could assist, Councillor Jones.
Sorry?
They are separate areas of legislation.
I understand that.
Planning wouldn't actually deal with licensing.
I know, I understand that, but it's still confusing.
Yes.
It might be worth just to answer that a little bit, Councillor, is that the environmental health were consulted as part of this application. So if there were, given that they advised us that this would, because it's more than 5 bedrooms across 3 floors, because that would then fall within their remit then regarding any license. If they had any major concerns, I'd like to think that they would highlight that to us during the, through the planning process.
Yeah, okay. Right, another question. I couldn't see because it's here on the screen. A number of slides are blurred, but I did manage to see the Google Maps that you put up on the street there. Can you tell me when that was taken? Is it on a Sunday morning when everybody's there, or during another time of the day when they're all at work?
If I could just come in quickly there, sorry, Councillor Jones, yeah, we wouldn't have the information as to the time of day those photos are taken. But I think, again, as we've had this issue raised on applications previously, we wouldn't deny that there could be certain times of day, certain times of the week that the roads, the highways could be busier than or quieter than have been shown in the photos.
And follow-up question, well, it's probably the opinion of the highways engineers, or not here to be asked, but having the 6 different tenants there who are quite likely the young professionals to have their own transport, there's adequate parking there close to Greenwich House. Is that the case?
The way that the engineers would look at it is that in its existing use, as it could be a 6-bedroom single family dwelling, is that there is an under provision, as the minimum standard would be 3 parking spaces. However, this use doesn't exacerbate that under provision, as you could have a family of 6 living there and every member could have that car.
Yeah, very unlikely. If you've got 6 tenants there and you've got a family with, I don't know, 2 or 3 younger children, they're not all going to have cars. Anyway,
Right.
And I think Michelle did have her hand up at some stage, Chair,
Yeah.
but
Was it a legacy hand, Michelle, or was it something that's been answered for you?
Yeah, I had a question that's been answered now, thank you.
Okay.
Scott.
To give clarity to Clive's question, the photo that they used on Google Maps was taken some point in October of 2021,
Okay.
oh, quite recent then.
relatively.
Any more questions?
Any more questions?
Yes, Councillor Roberts mentioned this property for vulnerable adults, which is a matter of a few yards away from there. In the consultees, in this case, because I presume that this, I don't know whether it's a private company who run this vulnerable adults, or is it directly our own social services department? Do any of the planning officers know the answer to that one?
I haven't got that information to hand, so I'm just looking back through the file to see if I can see anything there.
We didn't receive anything to indicate what we did, I don't think, Craig.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. From Gary.
Sorry, I said that we didn't have that information, you know, as to determine whether it was private or under our own direction.
Yeah. My further question is, Chair, in relation to something like this, where it's, in my view, significant, where you've got a property with vulnerable adults, that no consultation takes place with our social services department in the run up to this application, plan application being written. It's not normal practice then.
No, it's not normal practice to consult social services.
The Craig
Right,
Watkins, do you think it should be?
That could be something we look at, but again, I think in terms of the general publicity, immediate neighbours would be notified on occasion, and site notices will be put up in the vicinity. Appreciating that may not be that may not reach certain groups of the community, but I think that could be something we could look at. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Any further?
Any further questions? Yeah, so we go to comments.
If nobody else has got comments, Chair, I will go.
Has anyone else got the comment?
Anyone else got the comments? Yes.
No.
Well,
Clive?
I feel, yeah.
Go, Clive, go.
We've been down this road I don't know how many times. And HMOs, not only in Merthyr Tydfil, but seem to be breeding like rabbits in every local authority area. And for one reason and one reason only, and that's to make a profit from whoever individual or company owns that property. It's, in my view, I've heard what Mr. McGill has said, and he may well do his best to get 6 young professionals there, but I suspect that there's going to be a high turnover, and that these are not, in my view, Chair, permanent residences. I mean, you know, downstairs, with this particular application, the dining room's being taken out, so they have a meal, it'll have to be in the kitchen at all times. We are trying to say that this is going to decrease the housing problem, and I haven't quite worked out if, as we have a homelessness issue in Merthyr Tydfil as elsewhere, how this ties in to the local authorities' housing function. But it seems to me that the owners of these properties find their own tenants. So the question I've got to ask is how does that solve the homelessness problem? And for me, it doesn't really. We've all heard about the parking problems, inevitably. I know Aberfan Road. It's if you whatever time of the day of the week you drive down there, you'll find extreme problems in trying to find a parking space. And as I said in my question, it's inevitable if they're going to be young professionals, even though there's a bus stop perhaps close by, they're extremely likely to have their own mode of transport, whether that's I don't know, motorbike or a car. And there's no room to put it there. I have concerns, and that's why I asked the question to the planning officers about social services, that there's been absolutely no involvement or consultation with either the private owners of that property, or if it is a social services, the social services department. And I welcome the fact that the head of planning has indicated that that should be looked at in the future. We then come back to the real point, and that is this property, as it is designed, frankly, for a large family. We have large families on our housing waiting list, or number of children. We're waiting for accommodation chair for a long time, and yet again, this is another property which takes it out of the equation and is not available to these large families. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Clive. Councillor Preston, you had your hand up.
I did, but Clive has answered what I was going to say.
Okay.
No, he can't speak.
I'm sorry, Mr. McGill, you can't speak now. Scott?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I got a little bit of a speech in respect to my comments. If I can, I'll try and keep it as quick as possible. I've looked at the officer's report, but for me, it lacks vital local on-the-ground reality of the specific stretch of Aberfan Road. Greenwich House sits at an absolute heart of the community, at the community's most sensitive and congested hub. Directly opposite, we have a reasonably popular pub. There's a retail shop. There's a busy doctor's surgery just ever so slightly a small walk away, and a church has recently been opened after a full redevelopment, physically on the corner of that street itself. It's not quite the residential cul-de-sac. It's a high traffic, high activity corridor. In this case, my objection then is based on three specific and frankly non-negotiable points. Pedestrian safety and vulnerable users, with two schools at either end of the village, one well-used childcare setting, and a primary walking route for hundreds of children daily who are accessing public transport to go to schools outside of our village. We also have elderly residents, patients who are constantly sort of using that area, adding a 6-bedroom HMO, potentially 6 more cars, other potential vehicles into this specific bottleneck increases the risk of illegal or obscure parking, which directly endangers our children and our elderly. Conflict of use, the coming and goings associated with HMOs create a friction point. Directly opposite a pub and relatively close to surgery, we already have high demand for short-term parking for patients and shoppers. To take away residents' street capacity for a high-density HMO is a failure of planning logic. It creates a perfect storm of traffic movements that the current infrastructure simply cannot support. It can't support it now, so adding any extra is just beyond. A breach in respect of policy SW11. A policy states that development must not adversely affect the local transport network. Given the proximity of the church, surgery, and the chemist, the available curbside space is already a precious commodity. The proposal represents an over-intensification that will lead to parking displacement, pushing cars onto corners and junctions, further compromising visibility in a high-activity school zone. My closing request then, Chair, to approve this without seeing the chaos of the school run or the surgery hours would be a mistake. I move that we refuse the applications on the grounds of public safety and highway impact, or at the very least, and I know we can't, I would have requested a site visit during the peak hours so the committee can see why the local community is so rightly concerned. And so for that reason, I cannot and will not support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any further comments? Can we get somebody to propose this?
In the interest of moving the matter forward, thank you, Clive.
Thank you,
Councillor
Clive.
Dudley. And if someone could second it. Just need someone to second it in order to move towards the votes.
Oh, right.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Preston. So could all councillors in agreement with the officer's recommendation, which was for approval, please raise their hands. Thank you. If you could lower your hand, please. So could all councillors not in agreement with the recommendation, please raise their hands. Okay, thank you. And if you could lower those, please. Any councillor wishing to abstain, raise their hands. So no. So the officer's recommendation fails. So I now need to know what the reason for refusal is. If someone could give me a reason for refusal, then.
Yeah, I think, you know, we'd attach ourselves in the same vein as we did with the previous application in the area. And I think what we used there was obviously policy SW11, and obviously the unsatisfactory impact on the highway safety contrary to policy SW11 the LDP. I have been obviously trying to source additional information to strengthen reasoning behind the refusal should obviously one have been granted today. I think public safety is also something we need to consider. You know, given the information that we've been provided with today, there is a high impact on that. So I believe that also falls under the same policy. Craig would probably be able to clarify on that for me.
Yeah, the policy states that new development would be required to promote the creation of healthy and active environments and reduce the opportunity for crime and antisocial behaviour. That would probably be the criteria with the closest link to the issue you're looking to raise there. But again, I think reiterate what's been said at previous meetings like this, is that if the application was to be refused and then there was an appeal received, it would then fall to the local member to sort of deal with that appeal and the evidence behind